This event for the North American Heavyweight Championship, one fall or television time remaining. In the red corner, the challenger for the title, 276 pounds from Oklahoma University, Dr. Death Steve Williams. And across the ring from Marietta, Georgia, the North American Heavyweight Champion at 225 pounds, Brad Armstrong. Your referee, Randy Anderson.
Randy Anderson has been assigned by Mid-South to officiate this North American Heavyweight Championship match. One fall or television time remaining. There's the bell. Dr. Death made the statement earlier, Joel, that he has set a goal to win the North American title. He doesn't need his helmet, he says, or anything else to show people he is the toughest man in Mid-South. So this should be a great encounter. He is motivated.
Believe me, Jim, a man with his size, strength, and agility, I believe him when he says he doesn't need a helmet. I saw him wrestle on the mats at OU, play football, and he's just a heck of an athlete. Of course, you can see just from watching him in professional wrestling that he's one of the cream of the crop of professional athletes. And look at that. Doc's learning. He shaded the rules just as Pee Wee Anderson got under there. He was on the attack. He's after that North American belt. Dr. Death wants success. He wants recognition. He wants the promoters to be after him even more than they already are.
Well, as I said, whenever he came out of high school in Lakeland, Colorado, he was the #1 high school lineman in America. And when they signed with OU, I remember a newspaper article saying that he wanted to be an All-American at OU. He succeeded 4 times in that, ladies and gentlemen. He was a 4-time wrestling All-American. And, of course, Brad Armstrong, former national heavyweight champion, now North American champion. This match is further indication of why Mid-South Wrestling's #1 program in the country.
No doubt about it, Jim. This is one of the best main events I've seen. I'll tell you, I'd buy a ticket to see this one if it were at the matches. I'm just happy to be here commentating this. Dr. Death applying that powerful armbar.
It's interesting, Joel, the fact that Dr. Death has slowed the pace down somewhat than what we saw at the beginning of the match. He is, I would say, a little bit slower than Brad Armstrong. Not to say that Doc's slow, he isn't. But Brad Armstrong is so very quick, but Dr. Death now controlling the tempo.
With the time we have remaining in this hour, the time limit is very close to that of the normal 10-minute time limit for TV. So, of course, he can go for use the more psychological warfare and the more tactical warfare. There he is, trying to work that arm down and take some of the strength out of it.
Well, Dr. Death, Joel, took Brad Armstrong down, and I could not see exactly, but it looked as if he pulled the tights. And if he did, that's what's so frustrating about Dr. Death, because he is a tremendous wrestler. He has a great background.
Well, I think it's just basically Dr. Death's personality. If he has a goal, he doesn't really care exactly how he has to achieve it. He really surprised me when he turned on Hacksaw Duggan. And I think some of that still shows through, even though he is a tremendous athlete. And there, Brad Armstrong fighting back to his feet again. He's made it back to his feet, into the ropes, arm whip. Good move by Brad Armstrong. Oh, gosh.
Boy, I tell you can tell he played some football. He knocked Brad Armstrong almost out of the ring with that football tackle.
I think Brad Armstrong being outweighed there took the fuller brunt from all that tremendous mass that Dr. Death has.
Dr. Death in better condition than he was at Oklahoma University. There's no doubt about that.
I've been told that by Stan Abel on a couple of different occasions. He says, boy, you know, I can't believe Doc is trimmed down like this. Doc used to feel like he'd have to bulk up to wrestle heavyweight in the amateurs, and now that he's in the pros, he's kind of got a different psychological attitude now that a lot of smaller, more agile folks are really gaining a lot of fame and victories in professional wrestling nowadays. He has to get down there and get the agility to match him. Of course, we all know he's got the strength.
Dr. Death now. Brad Armstrong fighting right back.
Brad Armstrong, a fighting champion. He knows Dr. Death outweighs him. He knows Dr. Death's a big force, but he wasn't hesitant at all about signing this North American title belt. He wants to get out there and defend it. He's ready to put that title belt up and compete. He knows competition's the name of the game in Mid-South.
He's also a fine young man. I think as the fans grow to know him, they'll grow to really respect him. He's a great young man. Of course, next week, ladies and gentlemen, here on Mid-South Wrestling, Hacksaw Butch Reed returns, and the Rock and Roll Express will defend their Mid-South Tag Team titles against the Guerreros. So we will have another great hour next week.
Brad Armstrong back to his feet now. He's trying to get the distance away from Dr. Death. He needs that distance. When he's got the big man's weight on top of him, see, Dr. Death keeps pulling him down there and applying that weight. And that's what's going to keep Brad Armstrong in trouble, and Brad knows it. Brad needs to get up and get out of that hold before it really starts to take a toll on him, if it hadn't already. Brad Armstrong now having to keep those shoulders off the mat. It's Pee Wee Anderson, another fine official. Pee Wee's really grown in his officiating ability over the time I've seen him. He's really become a fine official. And like we've said before, I think Mid-South has the finest officials in the country.
I wholeheartedly agree, and a very tough job, a thankless job, as a matter of fact. Brad Armstrong has got to get on the offensive. As you mentioned, Joel, he has got to get on the offensive. Dr. Death is controlling the tempo, and he's controlling the match thus far.
And he continues to control it. You know, in 3 weeks, we're going to have some midgets here on Mid-South Wrestling, and I know everybody likes to see midget wrestling. It's kind of a novelty in some respects, but they're also athletes, and they get out there and they compete.
Dr. Death with that clothesline. That's 15 yards in the NCAA, but it's just a brutal maneuver here in Mid-South. Dr. Death with a 2 count. Brad Armstrong is in deep trouble, and the people here at the Irish Manile Boys Club can sense it.
Well, I think Dr. Death is a little bit frustrated. I think he took a little bit too much time on those, applying those holds. Used up that psychological advantage just a little bit too much, and maybe gave Brad Armstrong some breathing room. As you can see there, Brad is just firing away. Reverse arm whip. Dr. Death, a suplex. This could be it. We could have a new North. Oh, Brad Armstrong. Brad managed to get that shoulder up. I don't know if Dr. Death had that lateral press cinched up quite tight enough, but he wisely goes back to the arm hold.
What a near fall. We had 2 and a little bit. Almost a new North American champion, and we have, I understand, just over 1 minute left in television time.
Well, I don't know with the heat of battle if the wrestlers are aware of it or not. Brad Armstrong, Brad, terrific maneuver, terrific maneuver. He's fighting away, but Dr. Death, if I recall correctly, was the first one to throw fist in this battle, and oh!
You could hear that one all over the building.
Doc, a smart move, and back to the lateral press, and again, Brad Armstrong. Brad, I don't know where he's finding the reserve. He's got quite a heart. Oh, look at the punishment Dr. Death is applying. Into the turnbuckle.
We have less than 1 minute, Joel, of TV time remaining.
Brad Armstrong is fighting away now. If he could just catch that breath, get that second win, I think he can hold Dr. Death off. He's a good enough athlete. There he goes. A big forearm, arm whip into the ropes. A big fist.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have less than 15 seconds of airtime left. We really appreciate you being with us here this week on Mid-South Wrestling. For our ring announcer, Boyd Pierce and Joel Watts, I'm Jim Ross. We'll see you next week, everybody.